The cafe door chimed softly, its bell tinkling like a delicate secret as Mia pushed it open. The crisp morning air followed them inside, carrying the faint scent of autumn rain and jasmine from the florist next door. The place was warm and cozy, filled with the hum of quiet conversation, the hiss of the espresso machine, and the comforting aroma of freshly baked croissants. Mia brushed a strand of chestnut hair from her face and guided her 5-year-old daughter, Lily, toward the counter. The little girl's hand felt tiny and soft in hers, still sticky from the syrup on her breakfast pancakes. Lily wore her favorite yellow cardigan, the one with a loose button she refused to let Mia fix, and her curls bounced as she skipped lightly over the tiled floor. "Can I get a hot chocolate, Mommy? With marshmallows?" Lily asked, gazing longingly at the chalkboard menu above the barista's head. "You always ask that," Mia laughed. "What happened to your promise about trying something new today?" Lily scrunched her nose. "I said I'd think about it." The barista smiled as they ordered, scribbling quickly on 2 paper cups. Mia glanced around while waiting. She'd always loved this cafe. It was where she worked on her freelance designs sometimes, a quiet corner of the city that made her feel grounded. The same jazz playlist hummed softly from the speakers, and sunlight filtered through tall windows, turning dust motes into tiny specks of gold. Just as Mia reached for her wallet, Lily suddenly stopped talking. Her hand stiffened in Mia's grasp. Her big brown eyes, usually full of mischief, went wide and glassy. "Lily," Mia asked, frowning softly. "What is it, sweetheart?" The little girl didn't answer. Instead, she turned her head slowly toward a corner of the cafe. Her lips parted as though she recognized someone she hadn't seen in years. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "That's the man from my dream." Mia followed her gaze. There, seated alone by the window, was a man in a charcoal gray suit. He had an unreadable expression, his posture perfectly straight, his eyes lost in the screen of his laptop. The light caught on the side of his face, outlining strong features that spoke of discipline and distance. A half-empty cup of coffee sat untouched beside him. Mia blinked. She didn't know him. At least, she was certain she didn't. But something about the man's stillness, the quiet loneliness in his presence, made her chest tighten unexpectedly. Lily tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy," she said again, a little louder this time, "that's him. He was smiling at me in my dream. He said not to be afraid." The cafe's gentle murmur seemed to hush for a moment. The steam from the coffee machine rose like ghostly mist. Mia looked down at her daughter, then back at the stranger, and for a reason she couldn't explain, her heart began to race. The man by the window looked up. It was subtle at first, a shift in the air, a strange intuition that made him glance away from the glowing laptop screen. His eyes, a shade of steel gray that seemed to hold both warmth and winter, lifted toward the counter. The moment his gaze met the little girl's, something inside him stopped. Adrian Blackwell had faced boardrooms full of ruthless competitors without flinching. He had negotiated million-dollar deals with a steady, unbreakable calm. But now, across the hum of a cafe on a random Thursday morning, a child's wide-eyed stare made his pulse stutter. The girl didn't look afraid. She looked certain. Her curls framed her round face like a halo, and when she smiled, hesitant but pure, it was as if the noise around him faded completely. He blinked once, twice, trying to place her. Why did she look familiar? Adrian closed his laptop halfway, his fingers trembling. Slightly. That dream again. The one that had haunted him for months, maybe years. He never talked about it, not even to his assistant or his therapist. It always began the same way. A little girl lost in a forest, crying softly. He would reach out to comfort her, but just before he touched her shoulder, the dream would shatter into light. He had dismissed it as stress. A trick of the mind. A symbol of something missing in his life. But now, here she was, the same small, trembling hands, the same hopeful eyes. Adrian's jaw tightened. He leaned back in his chair, trying to steady his breathing. "Get a grip, Blackwell. It's just a coincidence. You're imagining it." But then the child whispered something to her mother, and both turned their heads toward him. Their eyes met again. Hers curious, the mother's cautious. For a brief second, the three of them were locked in an invisible thread of recognition that neither could explain. Mia felt her skin prickle. The man's presence filled the space, polished, powerful, yet oddly hollow. His tailored suit and silver watch screamed success, but his eyes looked tired. Lonely. He gave a small, almost apologetic nod before looking away, but the tension lingered. Lily tilted her head, studying him with the same intensity children use when they know something adults don't. "That's him," she whispered again. "The man who saved me." Adrian's throat constricted. The same words echoed in his memory, from the dream, from that moment in the misty forest when he had lifted the crying child into his arms and said, "You're safe now." He rubbed his temple, shaken. Maybe he really was losing his mind. But when he looked up again, the little girl was still staring at him with quiet trust, and for the first time in years, Adrian Blackwell, the untouchable CEO, felt something dangerously close to fate. Adrian sat frozen for several minutes, pretending to scroll through his phone, though he hadn't read a single word. His pulse thudded faintly in his ears. He'd faced crisis meetings, global investors, and hostile takeovers, but nothing had prepared him for the weight of a 5-year-old's gaze. He couldn't stop glancing at her reflection in the cafe window, the little girl sitting with her mother, sipping hot chocolate, her feet swinging above the floor. She kept sneaking looks at him too, as though she were waiting for him to remember something. Finally, when he couldn't take it anymore, Adrian stood. He adjusted his suit jacket, picked up his coffee, and walked toward their table. He told himself it was just curiosity, that he only wanted to clear his head, but his heart was racing in his chest. "Excuse me," he began softly, his tone polite but unsure. "I don't mean to intrude, but your daughter," she said something that caught my attention. Mia looked up, startled. Up close, he was even more striking. Tall, impeccably dressed, yet carrying a quiet weariness behind his composed expression. "Oh, I'm so sorry if she disturbed you," she said quickly, tucking a curl behind her ear. "Lily just has a big imagination." Lily interrupted, setting down her cup with a small thud. "No, Mommy, it's him," she insisted, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "He's the man who found me in my dream." Adrian froze mid-step, his coffee trembling slightly in his hand. "A dream?" he asked quietly. "What kind of dream?" "The forest," Lily said without hesitation. "It was dark, and I was scared. But you came. You told me not to cry." Mia frowned, glancing between them. "Sweetheart, that's just..." But Lily wasn't finished. She reached into the pocket of her yellow cardigan and pulled something out, a small, round, silver button. She held it in her palm like a secret. "You gave me this," she said simply. Adrian's world seemed to tilt. He stared at the button, engraved faintly with a crest he knew all too well. His tailor had made his suits custom, each marked with that very insignia. And one had been missing a button since last week. He had assumed it had fallen somewhere in his office. He set his coffee down, his hands suddenly clammy. "Where did you get that?" he whispered. Lily's answer came without hesitation. "You gave it to me when I was scared." Mia felt a shiver race down her spine. "Sir," she said carefully, "you're saying that button belongs to you." Adrian swallowed hard. "Yes," he murmured, eyes still fixed on the object that shouldn't exist in this reality. "It's mine." For a long, trembling moment, none of them spoke. The sounds of the cafe seemed far away. The laughter, the music, the clinking cups, all faded into a strange, suspended silence. Mia reached for her daughter's hand, her heart pounding. "What's happening here?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. Adrian met her eyes. His voice was low, almost reverent. "I don't know," he said. "But I think we were meant to meet." Rain began to fall outside the cafe. Soft at first, like a secret whispered against the glass, then steady and rhythmic. The chatter of customers dimmed as people pulled out umbrellas or lingered by the door, waiting for the storm to pass. Inside, however, at the small corner table by the window, the world seemed to have narrowed to 3 people who could no longer look away from one another. Adrian sat across from Mia and Lily, his once confident demeanor replaced with quiet disbelief. He turned the silver button over in his fingers again and again, as if hoping to find a logical explanation etched into its smooth surface. But there was none. "It doesn't make sense," he murmured finally, his voice low. "This button came off my jacket a week ago. I was in my office. There's no way she could have it." Mia's hands tightened around her coffee cup. Maybe she found it somewhere, she suggested weakly, though her voice lacked conviction. Kids pick things up all the time. Adrian shook his head slowly. This isn't a common design. It was custom-made for my suits. There are only 6 like it in the world. Silence stretched between them. Lily, undisturbed by the tension, traced little circles in the condensation on her cup. You said I was safe, she said suddenly, her voice soft but certain. You told me Mommy would find me soon. Mia turned to her daughter, startled. When did he say that, sweetheart? In the dream, Lily said matter-of-factly. I was lost in the dark woods. There were lights in the sky, and I cried. Then he came. He kneeled down and gave me the shiny button so I wouldn't be scared. Adrian's throat tightened. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and asked gently, what else did I say? Lily's eyes lifted to his. You said, we'll meet again when it's time. The words hit him like a physical blow. He inhaled sharply, his composure slipping for the first time in years. He couldn't explain the shiver that ran through him, but he knew, deep down, that something larger than coincidence was unfolding. Mia reached out, resting a tentative hand on his. Maybe you two were meant to cross paths, she said softly, her voice trembling. I don't know why or how, but it feels fated. Adrian finished for her. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance. Lily yawned and leaned against her mother's shoulder, her small body growing heavy with drowsiness. Mia stroked her curls gently, her eyes lingering on the man across from her, this stranger who somehow felt familiar, as though she'd known him long before this moment. Adrian watched them quietly, a strange warmth spreading through his chest. The loneliness that had lived inside him for years, the cold, hollow ache of success without purpose, seemed to loosen its grip. He looked down at the little silver button in his palm, then at the sleeping child. Maybe she dreamed of me because I needed to remember something, he said quietly. Mia tilted her head. Remember what? He smiled faintly, eyes softening. That not everything in life can be planned or built. Some things are simply meant. The rain deepened outside, washing the city clean. And as the 3 of them sat in that warm cafe, strangers tied by a thread of impossible coincidence, something unseen began to stir. Not magic exactly, but something gentler, older, and far more mysterious. The quiet beginning of destiny.